We are less than a week away from the 10th anniversary, which means there are about to be tons of fan favorite cards entering the meta. So let's take a moment to look at some of the cards that didn't get any love from the community or the devs. These cards were so useless they weren't even hated, they were just completely forgotten. Also, please subscribe and like the video so I don't go broke. Now let's get straight into the video. This first one is super recent and I wouldn't even be surprised if a lot of you had no idea this card came out. It's LR, TEQ, Piccolo, and Gohan. This unit isn't even bad, it's very solid and strong. The reason it's completely forgotten about is because everyone was focused on Dirty Fireworks Vegeta. Vegeta is the Namek Saga leader, so shouldn't this card have been very popular too? Well, I don't know what happened, but I think most of Namek Saga Celebrations units were forgotten about simply because we were a few easy A's / summonable units away from having Namek Saga be a top team. There's some very solid cards on this category now, and hopefully with the release of the 10th anniversary, we can soon get an easy A for in LR SSJ Goku and the AGL LR Full Power Frieza that came out a long time ago. If that happens and the easy A's are top 5, then this team and this unit will finally get the love they deserve. And hopefully Gohan and Piccolo won't have to be in this type of video ever again. S tier Gohan and Piccolo on the other hand had their moment even if it was very short-lived and only on JP Dokkan, but they deserve to be in this video as an honorable mention nonetheless. This Saiyan Saga card came out way too late on Global and was sandwiched between two of the biggest celebrations of the year, meaning 90% of people skipped this unit. I don't know what it is with Piccolo and Gohan duo units, but it seems like they have terrible luck. Moving on to our next unit, let's travel way back to 2017 where mono teams ran the game. But one of the main leaders during this time period was completely forgotten about, and that is SSJ3 Broly. This guy came out during a period of time where Dokkan did not really flesh out their extreme teams. Broly was the leader for extreme tech types, but this card was just kinda mid. A very hype unit and super cool on paper, but it was just hard to use him unless you were a whale who owned most of the cards in the game. For most people, this was not the case, and even if he was loved as a character and idea, he was completely forgotten about. Even when they had a chance to make him good with an easy A years later, they still fumbled him and continued to leave extreme teams out of the meta. I hope this card gets the super easy A it deserves and becomes meta for at least one period of its life cycle. Most people barely know about this unit's existence. Even AGL Super 17 had more of a presence than this guy back in the day. Speaking of Super 17 though, let's talk about TEQ LR Super 17. This guy is on the unfortunate GT Bosses team and came out in 2021. I've never seen anyone talk about this guy besides asking for an easy A. He isn't a bad unit for the time period he was released in, but there were definitely some issues based around the rest of his card. This guy suffers from an illness known as I have no categories or teams to be used on itis, and it's very serious, almost terminal illness for a Dokkan card. And if most people can't use a card on their favorite teams, why would they even bother trying to get it? So if no one gets the card and no one wants the card, you get an easily forgotten unit. But not only did they fumble this card, they also fumbled the STR Super 17, who had a way better chance of success and a way better kit on top of being released in a time period where categories were a lot more forgiving. His main issue came from once again being sandwiched between two major celebrations. This Super 17 in my opinion is a really cool card and isn't half bad, but they really screwed him over in every way they could. He wasn't good enough to be worth summoning, but he wasn't bad either. He was just kind of mid with no help, and that caused everyone to ignore and forget about this unit. Next up, we've got the very mid LR Hatchiyack, a character from a movie that not many people have seen. This guy is a Dokkan Battlefield reward that you can buy from the Baba's shop. He wasn't a bad card, maybe a bit average, but that's about it. The real reason he's so forgotten is because it takes so much time to earn enough purple crystals just to buy one copy of this card. Not many people play this mode every month, and it's not exactly the easiest event ever either. So with all these factors combined, it makes sense that most people completely forgot about this very average card. The reason I mention him specifically is because he's probably one of the better Ultimate Clash LRs, yet almost no one cared when he released. To be fair though, all of these Baba's shop units could be in this video. Moving on, LR INT Piccolo and Goku. These two came out in 2021, meaning they are due for an easy A soon, but for a card with such a cool art, this unit is very slept on. The LR physical Goku and Piccolo had a decent run, especially with their crazy high damage, but the INT LR duo did not last long at all since they came out during a meta shift. They were not a bad card when fully maxed out, but are completely overshadowed by the physical type of LR Goku and Piccolo, who were even viable in 2024. So not only did they age out quick and get overshadowed, they only had 5 categories, making them hard to run while not even being the best option on their teams. This card is in a very unfortunate situation, and it's sad to see a unit with such a cool card or be forgotten. Luckily though, this card doesn't have an easy A yet, and if they make them super insanely OP, this card could finally earn a spot on one of its rightful teams. Another honorable mention that's along the lines of this card is actually future Gohan and young Teen Trunks. They came out in like late 2021 and got completely aged out instantly because all the cards that came right after them were way better and way less limited. Next up is a unit that is okay now and was very good on release, Android 21. Android 21 has a great kit and many people were willing to summon for her when she came out. Her issue was that the team she was on needed some time to develop, and by the time they had enough characters to fill a full team, this card wasn't one of the top options anymore. So now, most of the time, people just have a maxed out Android 21 who just sits in their box and is only used for Ultimate Clash and a few rare missions for boosted drop rates. She can still hold her own in some endgame content, but why use her and struggle when you can just bring a replacement that came out way more recently and does the job better? She had some decent hype on launch, but sadly got caught up in bad scheduling on Dokkan's part, and now she's just collecting dust in people's boxes. HEL Ultimate Gohan is a super cool card who suffered the same fate as Android 21. He's a pretty solid card, but still unfortunately has way too many replacements who are way better. Very cool art and mechanics, but giving him Boo Saga restrictions way before a Boo Saga celebration kinda screwed him over, and now most people don't consider him to be on par with the rest of the Boo Saga team's units. I nearly forgot this next unit again, even though I got tons of comments on my last video that he should have been on the most hated units of all time list. This card I'm talking about is of course the Tree of Might LR Goku. I don't even think he was hated. He was just straight ignored by the entire community. This unit was released entirely to waste Dragon Stones and was not usable for any event that did damage. All this guy did was damage. At least he did some decent damage, but besides that, this unit is one of the most forgettable units of all time. The only reason people bring him up is because of how big of a joke he is. I have no idea what they were cooking with this unit, but I hope it never happens again because it's a waste of time for the animators, the fans, and the devs. Another unit that falls into a similar category as TEQ is the INT Blue Bros. These two came out really late and didn't offer anything special besides rainbow orb changing, which is great but unremarkable since all they get is a minor stat buff and a bunch of crit for collecting rainbow orbs. No stacking, no guard, no damage reduction, just raw stats. This unit would have been game changing if it were released a year and a half earlier, but in 2022, this type of kit is just kinda worthless. The units I'm about to talk about are all here because they get overshadowed by competition in their era and didn't receive any love on their easy A's either. Physical TEQ Broly is the first one. This guy came out along with Super Vegito, who completely overshadowed every unit in the game. So imagine competing for player stones when the literal best card in the game is on the same banner as you, and this Broly was the only Broly who didn't have AoE supers. All he got was an additional attack. The other unit I want to mention here is INT TUR Blue Vegeta. People forget this guy was supposed to be a demigod lead at the time of release, but most of those units were a flop since Ki plus 3 was almost necessary. The only one of those units who got any love was Kaioken Blue Goku, since AGL teams were still the best there was. Unfortunately for Vegeta though, he was an INT type and also not the best or strongest unit. His passive was pretty lame and didn't bring anything new besides a debuff on extreme type bosses. His easy A wasn't much better, but at least he gained the ability to stun and give some defense to allies when facing a Realm of Gods enemy. This card was just really boring and led a boring team, making him a part of these forgotten units. Anyways guys, what do you think? Did I forget anyone I shouldn't have forgotten to forget? Let me know down below in the comments. I try to reply to every single comment, so don't be scared to ask questions or speak your mind. Thank you all so much for watching. Please consider subscribing if you made it this far.